Hello, everyone. Welcome to Roll for Beer, the best beer drinking podcast this side of a Sunday night from Canada. And you'll you'll notice that even though it's not St. Patrick's Day, apparently we both decided to wear green shirts.
Look, it is laundry day. I chose my comfiest shirt, and it just happened to be green. I blame you. You copied me.
That's fair. I
All
like it.
right.
I I absolutely decided on this first thing this morning. I spent the entire day at children's birthday parties.
Oh boy, you do need a drink.
I'm I've got a full lineup here. So
Oh, so do I.
Uh, for the astutely minded and visual acuity minded folks, you'll notice that my co-host no longer has a bright ginger beard and or spectacles. Um, Riley is working on a bunch of other stuff right now, and I've had to uh, dig deep and search long and hard to find some friends to come and help me out. Um, Riley is safe and happy and having a good time, but is a very busy man right now. So, um, welcome. You may recognize Allison from our uh, Tales of Logomancy series on Wednesday nights, where David runs them through some Wild West D&D shenanigans. Um, Say hi, Allison.
Hi, Allison.
I
Yes, I'm
was waiting
running
for
with
that.
that. Yeah, you know what? You're a dad. Expect the dad jokes.
Absolutely.
um. So yeah, hi everybody. I'm, as my lovely co-host has said, Allison, also known as Geek Baker. I do the Logomancy streams on Mondays sometimes, but I'm doing mostly Wednesdays.
Mhm.
I'm a pastry chef actually in real life, hence why Geek Baker thought it was appropriate. Uh, and I'm actually a newbie to streaming and podcasts. So when he reached out to me and said, "Hey, I have this podcast," I was very excited to jump on it because I'm a maritimer and I drink and I know things and I know geeky things. So I'm going to put that knowledge to use as an excuse to drink.
Absolutely. So, given that this is your first time around here, kick at the can for Roll for Beer. Let me explain the premise. Step one, we roll for beer.
Oh no, really? Shit, I don't have diet. Oh, yeah.
Okay. Step two, drink that beer. Now, I have a question for you. Being a
Mm,
maritimer, I can
yes.
only imagine that you also had some form of this game. That game is called Drink That Beer. And how do you play? First, you drink that beer, and then you drink that
Another
beer, and then
another
you drink
beer.
that beer.
If anyone's seen Family Guy, like first time it starts, like, drink this beer, yay! What do I win? Another beer. That's pretty much the game, and that's how we're going to play.
I like it. So I have a number of beers in front of me. I'm going with four. Um, but if I roll a 12 on my die, I'm gonna
Oh,
I'm gonna I'm gonna take a pull of Dr. Ramshackle's old fashioned juice that makes you explode.
we want a 12. We want a 12, chat.
Warning. This probably shouldn't be consumed by anyone, but I'm not your
No.
real dad. Just don't get it in your eyes or let it touch your bits. So,
Was the last part really necessary?
yes, it was.
Touche.
So I bottled up a dozen of these for my friends,
I want
and
one.
you get one.
Yes.
Riley gets one. David gets one. Anybody in our crew, and if somebody in the audience really wants this, we'll figure it out. But it's 95% grain alcohol, Carolina Reaper peppers, ice cream vanilla Trinidad Maruga scorpion peppers, a bunch of vanilla beans, cherry ghost peppers, and orange habaneros to add a little sweetness.
Yeah, sweetness, and also I'll be on the toilet for the next 5 hours. No
That
one talk to me.
that is the thing. I drank a big glass of it the other night when I bottled it all up. It was a mistake, not just because it's basically moonshine, but because it hurt to feel feelings. But in a year, this is going to be great.
In a year.
Yeah, it mellows out. The last batch did too. So, but I digress. We should get along with rolling for beer.
Yes, I'm actually quite thirsty, and I have a lovely glass and a lovely dice.
And I have a lovely glass and a lovely dice. Riley actually gave me this. So,
Ooh.
all right. 3,
3,
2,
2.
1 for that ASMR goodness.
I'm rolling.
It's a 7.
It's a 7, damn it. I'm actually rolling. I didn't say this. I'm actually have 6 beers
Mhm.
hidden over to the side, and I rolled a 3. So
All
that'd
right.
be
Tonight, for me, I have uh, out of Winnipeg, Manitoba, Lowlife Brewing Company's Kiss Kiss. It's a peach Brett Sour Saison, 6%. And I was a little concerned at first what the imagery on the side of the can is, because I'm like, this is a family-friendly show. But it's actually just a bunch of hands layered on top of each other. I thought somebody was putting the fingers to something all of a sudden.
Oh, buddy, no. So I'm drinking this. You cannot see the can.
I'm not allowed to show this. What about you? What'd you grab?
So I got 0 issue Immortal Heather Ale, and it's
Mhm.
brewed right here in Calgary.
Zero Issue is the first sponsor we ever had.
And to be honest, the art was gorgeous. And so what I did was I looked at the weirdest art I could find. This is gorgeous art on a
Yes.
can.
I actually, in my lineup, I also have a Zero Issue. I had Rock, the Mexican lager.
That was there too, but this
Yeah.
one it was pretty much just like there's lightning, there's a dragon. This screams D&D.
I haven't found a Zero issue brew I haven't really dug. There was I can't remember which one is their like generic IPA kind of deal. I tried it once and I was like, okay, yeah, that tastes like an IPA for me. Let's move this along. I've gotten no uncertain amount of flack for my beer tastes and or lack thereof, but it is what it is.
It is what it is.
We should crack it again for the ASMR. You try and crack it in front of the mic, but don't spill it on yourself.
Don't
know?
you do that every stream anyways?
You shush. You shush.
Am I wrong, chat? Tell me I'm wrong.
What's the term? You shut your whore mouth. No.
All right.
All right. 3, 2, 1. Oh, there it is. Right on the mic. So fuzzy.
And I actually brought a glass.
You know what? I'm going to use the whiskey glass. Why not? It has a color.
Mine does not.
Oh, well, that's unfortunate. This is buttery. We're going to call it buttery. I've been instructed to stop using certain comparisons, but it's got that goldenness to it. Smells very. Did I buy a fucking pineapple beer? What? No.
Ooh.
No.
Is it a pineapple beer?
It better not be. I hate pineapple. No. It's a peach sour. It's probably just the stone fruit kind of like coming through as acidic. That's a big beer. I like it.
Well, I only go for talls. The
That's
little cans don't do nothing. You don't get the flavor very well.
That is delightfully sour. It's got a good pucker to it. And no chat. It was the pineapple at Bolero's that was pretty good. I'm like, I don't eat pineapple in my life at all, but we were out for a friend's birthday and I was like, you know what? That pineapple on a sword, put it on my plate. Shove it in my mouth. And it wasn't good. It was fine. But that's a really big leap for me, given my relationship with pineapple over the years. That's excellent.
I will say mine is it's not very sweet. It gives me a lot of Alexander Keith vibes.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah. So get that little
What
ready
is it?
feel at the end.
As the kids say, mid.
I
It's
feel
just
like
it's just here. Yeah. It's fine.
Good. It's a better. I would go for this other than an Alexander Keys, but it's very weedy. Like you can taste like bready.
Yeah. Haha.
Oh, good.
Good transition. No.
Did you see what I did there?
I did. Keith's is fine. Like it's a reasonably good beer. Like if
It's the
somebody
first beer I had because
that's
it's a
fair.
maritimer thing. My grandfather would have tons of it in the house, and we would steal some. I
I
mean, we would have it legally.
uh-huh. I've made no bones about when I started drinking a copious amount of kokanee as a child, and I very much was a child. Um,
As a
but
child.
it's one of those things where it's like you you never forget your first kind of deal, right? But if somebody rolls up to a party and they're like, "Cool, I brought beer," and they brought a pack of Alexander Keiths, people are going to drink it.
Yeah.
If
This
you pop open a
this
cooler and it's full of, kokanee or Rickard's Red or something, it's all right. Like it's probably nobody's favorite, but it's there. Unless you're in Saskatchewan and then it's like Pilsner or nothing, and I don't
no,
understand the who hurt
I
you.
it's Saskatchewan. They're all hurt. Did you
Well, they're
see them on
hurting.
the they're hurted, and you see them on the map. They're just all straight lines. It looks like somebody forced the province in.
There's
So,
that. Um, but that said, um, you mentioned bread, and one of the things that we're going to look at tonight, because very on theme, you deserve your own origin story episode. And being a pastry chef, pâtissière, don't at me, I did horrible in French.
I
Uh,
make desserts that taste good. We'll just go with that.
yeah, yeah. And you're not a baker, you're a pastry chef. The differences in education.
I just have a diploma.
That's fair.
That's that let's be honest, people. Once you get a diploma, you get a fancy title at the end of it.
Yep. I got a piece of paper saying I know what I'm doing.
Exactly.
C's get degrees, people. Those are rookie numbers. Get them up. No. Yeah. One of the things that we often do is we'll touch on a little bit of tangential things. So we'll look at a topic, whether it's a beer topic, whether it's a food topic, whether it's something,
Why not both?
and why not both? And then we will look to tie it into how we improve our world building, how we improve our games as time goes on. So, um, bread, the glorious great equalizer that people have eaten for 5,000 years, plus, you know, give or take a week or two.
Just a
Well,
week, maybe an hour. Who knows at this point? Like,
and
been here
like
forever.
that's not including things like bannocks and flatbreads and all sorts like unleavened breads and like cornbreads, probably even longer than that.
Oh yeah,
Uh,
before yeast was around.
yeah,
Oh,
100%. Yeast was a bacterial accident. Have
it was.
have you ever made homemade yeast from fruit before?
I have not, but I know that a lot of breweries still do it to this day.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I have. It smells atrocious.
Oh yeah. Oh,
I I
I
don't.
do it. I can't do it because of the smell. I can't. My friend did it for a college project. We had to make our own recipe, and they actually did their own yeast.
So the first time that I made yeast was on accident in college. It wasn't for a project. It was because we were like six dudes living in an apartment or in a townhouse.
I want you to explain how you accidentally make yeast.
Well, you know that if you take a bunch of fruit in a cup and it has some water and or leftover ice cubes and you forget about it in a dark place for a while and it bubbles. That is I'm sorry for if I'm shattering the illusions of some people. When that bacteria starts eating all the sugars in that fruit, that's that's you're making fruit yeast at that point.
Hey, hey, sorry, women. He's taken. The man who makes yeast is taken.
It's a
So
thing. Yep. The only difference between college students and people doing it in a brewery is intent
you could have just, hey,
and
I would have been
sanitation.
like, we have the opportunity now. Let's try it.
No, we have the technology. It's a thing. But no, I've made yeast before, and I've made bread with that yeast. Not just that, but like actually in a sterile kitchen environment. I was like, oh hey, let's give this a try, right? Um, I I do a lot of like ranger shit, as I've alluded to it in the past. Prepper ranger shit, where it's like, okay, um, can you make coffee from dandelions? You absolutely can, 100%. You roast the roots of a dandelion and you grind it down, and it tastes kind of like coffee, and it's kind of got some caffeine in it. And it's pretty. You're drinking flower juice, but aren't we all just drinking flower juice at this point?
You know, Uncle Ira would smack you in the back of the head for that one.
Right?
Just,
Well, it's not hot. It doesn't count as tea. It's okay.
ah, you've had iced tea.
Ah, yeah.
So
That's
you,
not real tea. That's
it's
sugar with a vibe, like
hey,
sugar with a
hey.
hat on.
Well, another thing that they call yeast is like in beer is liquid bread, and that's been around forever.
Mhm,
So I think it's still touching the same base. You've had that experience of making it and everything. You're making your own drinks right now.
mhm.
So it's kind of expanding your field.
This I had a glass of this the other night, and the camera doesn't do it justice here because it looks really orange.
It's
Um,
vibrant red, isn't it?
it I'll send you a picture later. When I poured it in the Scotch glass, because I had 2 fingers of it, and it was, no word of a lie, like the color of our logo. It might have just been
Oh
the lights in the kitchen, but it was this dark, sinister red that was foreboding, and it made me hurt.
you know what? I feel like when that just happens, all we hear in the background is the horror
No, no,
movie.
no, no, no,
Quick,
no, save it off. No.
quick thing. I have to ask this. I was grown up. I was grown up. I was growing up. I learned how to pour drinks, and they said 2 fingers. And when I was taught 2 fingers, I was said this was 2 fingers.
Yeah. Yeah, you,
Apparently, this is 2 fingers.
sideways double horns. Um, when you say 2 fingers, this is how tall the drink should be,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. No.
The trouble is that everybody's hands are a different size.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's not this much liquor. It's when you do 2 fingers, the drink should be this tall.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I. So you made your own yeast, which is fantastic. Like
Yep.
that's actually really cool.
I
Because
used it to make sourdough, and
sourdough's a
uh
bitch.
it was, uh, decidedly worse than using, so I use, bread maker yeast normally.
Yes.
Rather than, like, quick yeast or packet yeast, I'll use, like, the Fleshman's, bread maker yeast, specifically because I do peasant loaves. So, I like that yeasty taste in the bread that you get from using a bread maker yeast versus using, like, a sourdough starter or, like, the one-off package or packets of yeast. Um, so I'll do a recipe that basically it'll make 2 loaves of bread, but instead I make 6 loaves of bread out of it, and they're just like, the size of a cantaloupe or whatever.
Oh, what I recommend if you're doing that, buy a pizza stone.
Oh, thank you so much for the raid, Scarlet, of 54 folks. We are sitting down and we're talking about bread and building communities in our TTRPG environments. So thank you so much. Um, but yeah, Scarlett actually participated with us in our last Roll for Wishes campaign back in October. She played a blue Yoshi, and that was a. She's like, we're doing character creation. She's like, I want to be a Yoshi in a wizard hat, and I'm like, we can work with this. Like,
Okay,
let's.
Scarlett, I haven't met you. Hi, by the way, I am Allison, also known as Geek Baker. I am hopefully maybe the next new co-host. We don't know yet. We're figuring it out. But I love you. That sounds like the best character ever made. Because first of all, you could just yell at people the whole time.
Absolutely, hundred
Second of
percent.
all, you're a Yoshi. No one gets mad at a Yoshi. They're adorable.
Get this, Yoshi, um, Gandalf, Chitara from Thundercats, and Tinkerbell raiding through the Wizard of, like, the Land of Oz.
I would pay to see that. I'll be honest.
You,
That sounds like an
you
amazing thing.
you don't have to. It's on YouTube. It's free. It's
Well,
like
I
a.
know what I'm going to be doing for my next study session. Well, what's on the background?
I love it. But that said, we were talking about like bread and where it goes from, or sorry, where it comes from, and how we build up our communities around certain things. For anybody that's sat through the podcast before, about 2 episodes ago, 2 or 3. My memory fails me. We had Adam Dries on. He's a fantasy author. Just published Wondrous and Perilous Treasures Volume 2. I actually got some publication stuff in that. So I
Mhm.
made up a bunch of magic items in that made it into the final draft. So, but we were talking about apples specifically because we did a roll for cider episode, and I started going off on our regular Monday 5e show and why there's orchards and apple trees everywhere because apples become the basis for your rations for your adventures. Long-term food storage, apples were everywhere. Um, they can be a basis for sugar. They can be a basis for medicine, depending on the kind of tree that you go into. Like I said, I get into doing ranger shit a lot with the kind of research that we do. And so yeah, it's chickens, apples, and bread for everything that they were doing because when you're dealing with adventurers, long-term food storage kind of matters. You can't goodberry your way through life with everything, but historically, bread was a staple of communities, and if you didn't have a community, you didn't have bread. Not because people didn't know how to do it, but because one of the staple ingredients you kind of required a civilization for. So, I,
What
I are you into Townsend's much, Allison?
I'm not into Townsend's per se, but what you brought up with like grain and bread and everything, and like if you didn't have a town, you wouldn't have bread or anything. Actually, they actually show in studies that beer came before bread.
I
So it
believe it.
actually, the grain was stored before bread,
Mhm.
and once beer was being made, that's when yeast was produced, and someone decided, let's put it in a loaf of bread, and that's how.
So we talked before, like I've made yeast from fruit.
Mhm.
How is yeast traditionally made? Uh, like if you aside from like starters and things like that, I think everybody going through COVID experimented with a sourdough starter at some point.
Let's be honest. I worked in a bakery all throughout COVID, and when we ran out of yeast, there was nowhere to buy it.
Yeah.
And it's pretty much just bacteria. That's all yeast is
Mhm.
pretty much is. And what I love about like when we decided to do this podcast, we talked about what we want to talk about is the symbiotic relationship on hey, beer and bread couldn't exist. We couldn't have beer without bread and we couldn't have bread without beer and bringing it up to like what makes beer and bread, it's just the yeast. And yeast
Yeah.
is made by just like the grains, different grains, but a lot, like you said, it's made by fruit. It's made by sometimes vegetables. There's a pumpkin yeast out there.
Yeah. What's the fermentation process for it? Like if is it you take the grain, you get it wet, you let it ferment in a dark, dry place?
See, it's different for each type of yeast.
Okay.
So we could be here for a long time because there's different yeast out there. There's instant yeast. There's already made to use yeast, which is like the wet, like you get in a block
Yeah.
and it's like a
Well, I
Play-Doh
mean
type
like
stuff.
if you were in a medieval setting or a fantasy setting and you had I'm a craft me some yeast sort of
I'm a
thing.
craft me some yeast.
Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. I'm a craft me some yeast. If you were looking at, well, you have a brewer, and in traditional times, like I'm talking 18th century America's kind of deal, or Germany, your brewer would essentially, or your baker would go to the brewer for the dregs,
Yes.
which is the uh, everything that's going to have a little bit of bacteria flowing into it to start perpetuating starters, and from a little you can make a lot. But barring that brewer existing, you're dealing with communities that are doing like flatbreads, bannocks, that sort of thing, unleavened bread.
Well, yeast is very different, but to be honest, a simple yeast, if we're just going to go simply, it's pretty much like making a starter. It's just flour and water,
Mhm.
and you put it in, you mix it together, half and half, put it together, and you leave it in a tempered control room. I like to do like a nice warm room because I've made starters before. It's pretty much
Mhm.
the same thing, except for starters, you're doing it slowly. And then you just leave it for a few days. It will grow, it will start bubbling and everything. And then you take it out and put in more flour, feed it. It's almost exactly like doing a starter.
Yeah.
Nowadays, they make it more condensed.
Yeah.
So they have machines to do that. But back in the day, people would just make starters, and during that, that's what they would use. They would keep on doing it, and then
When I was doing the fruit yeast, and again, this is a mason jar, a bunch of fruit, and a little bit of extra, really, really ground up sugar. Um,
yes, because fruit and sugar make yeast. However, if you put yeast in dough, sometimes it'll help you grow it, sometimes it'll overgrow it,
yeah,
and then it'll just be a huge problem. Never add salt.
no, no.
Kills
So
your yeast.
salt equals death. Yeast equals slugs.
Yes.
Not really, not really. This is not medical advice. No. But no, we talk about the different um, homogenous people that exist in a community and relying on each other. And like we look back through our own history, and we had a lot of that where um, your your local inn, like there was always food for people provided at a reasonable rate. Very few people ever cooked at home. Um, if you lived in some kind of a tight knit community, if you lived way out in the boonies, you basically did everything for yourself when you weren't engaging with your community. But in our world building and in our games, the curse of the DM is that you have to wear 1,001 hats, and they're not always cool wizard hats. I mean, I like wizard hats and all, but
Hey, I like baker hats. When I'm a DM, I have to make a certain hat where it's like I have to wear a baker hat sometimes where it's, oh, I need you to pick up this grain from a different farmer. The farmer will go, your party will go get the grain from that farmer and bring it in, making that symbolic relationship.
yeah. The the hard thing is the NPCs exist in your world, and it's not always it's not always sexy. It's not always glamorous. They're not always well, they're not always fuckable, but it's just not a thing.
It,
As,
you know what? It's true. If anyone has seen the Logomancy streams on Wednesdays, we have messed up David quite a few times by saying, "Oh, this NPC, they don't mean anything," and we'll be like, "We're gonna make them our new friend." What? Then you had to build their life.
they mean nothing. I've been DMing for too long. Um, I want to say, oh shit, I'm gonna be 38 soon. This is 26 years I've been at behind the DM screen.
Mazel tov.
The thing. I have the hairline to prove it. No.
Hey, you know what? I have before coming on to Logomancy, I was a DM as well.
Mhm.
I DM'd a lot and I was teaching kids on everything. And one of the things we did touch based on is if you're building a world, because a lot of kids wanted to get into being a DM, you're building a world, you can't just throw players in. You need to have like you need to have like there's books and everything, but if you're making your own homebrew, you need to make sure that, hey, here's this NPC. Why are they there? Who are their friends? So if
Mhm.
they kill that NPC, like, oh, I'm gonna kill that NPC, it gonna die now, their friends are going to be bad and their friends are going to come to attack them. Who are their friends? So that's pretty much it.
We we've touched on this in the past of uh like prep and
Mm.
like NPC creation and fleshing out your world comes down to some of that you should do ahead of time. And in localized areas. So you're dealing with you're in a town. I should probably know the name of the town. I should probably know the influential figures in the town. So if they're like, oh, who's the blacksmith? Who's the like is there anybody running some kind of like arcanist shop, or is there like a um an old witch that lives out in the boonies that eats children but can also sell us healing potions? Um
That is extremely detailed. Have you asked that
And no, but I've been asked that before several times. But the kinds of things that are tropes, you generally want to at least scribble something down. Have something prepared. You don't have to have a fleshed out backstory for them, but like a name and maybe a description, right? A mugshot, if you will. But for every session, you need this much notes.
before?
That's it. And for the folks listening on Spotify and everywhere except for Apple Podcasts, because you know what you did. Um, I've held up a 3x5 note taking card,
Yeah, you don't need much. Even when I still DM sometimes.
Mhm.
I DM like a small group on Fridays. You don't need much to DM. But one of the things I will recommend if you're doing building your own town and everything, and they're like, oh, that we want to meet this NPC. And since we're talking about symbolic relationships with a lot, is if they start really talking to this NPC and this NPC mentions another name that you did not have prepared because they just keep on talking. They're like, "Oh, do you have any friends or family?" And you have to keep on repeating that. Write that down because they're gonna go check that NPC.
See, I've already hacked this whole system
Oh,
because
have you?
we record our games and put it on Twitch and YouTube. So I regularly go back and look at the last episode recording and be like, "What the fuck did I call that guy?"
Well, if you don't have that chance,
Yeah.
then you're screwed. You're like, "What was his name?" And they're like, "Oh yeah, he told us to do this." And you're like, "Oh wait, what?"
Yeah. I keep a written notebook for any time I'm physically behind a screen for stuff, but it also comes with a rider. Like the NPCs that your players take interest in are the important ones, whether you intended them to be important or not. And a lot of newbies get caught up in the idea of I'm doing my writing, I'm planning my fleshing out my world, and you just live in it. And it's like, well, that's a nice sentiment, but that's not how this works. Um, I apologize for the pre-roll ad there for the folks that are watching. I totally didn't catch that, and I forgot those were turned on for this. So the people on YouTube wouldn't have noticed that in any way, shape, or form. So, but no, the and we talked about this about 2 episodes ago with Adam on the difference between writing for an audience and co-writing a story. And playing at a table is very much co-writing your story versus like being a fantasy author or a creative writer where it's like, and this is the town and here's all the important people and you're just interacting with my people in my story. And if that's where you start, congratulations, that's where most of us started. But you're gonna find over time that it gets a little old and you have more complex games because of it, and not in a good way. You end up either with the players fighting against your ideas, or not being able to carve out a niche for themselves as easily as though, or as easily as if they were um, writing the story with you. Um, for the uninitiated, or if you've never listened to the podcast before, and I've referred to this a boatload of times, we run a thing called I Know a Guy. And I Know a Guy is a mechanical benefit that you give to your players when you're starting up a game, where we all do a session zero and establish safety tools and, um, draw our lines and veils. But you say, well, you're all playing in Baldur's Gate. You live here, right? Where do you live? Like, are you renting an attic somewhere? Who's the landlady that rents you stuff? Critical Role did a really good job with this with campaign 3. For the first time they kind of touched on it because they're not just like murder hobos. Well, I mean they are, um but if you break it down, like um a DM's role is to provide the hooks to get the players to the next part of the story to do like dope monk shit. Right? I need to get you from you're here and I need to get you over there so you can punch some shit and get some shinies and or sex up that dude. Like something. Like you do your own games. I'm not your dad.
Well, you
Right?
know what? You know, there's a line, man.
Like
um,
as long
but
as
yeah,
everybody's having a good time, that's what matters.
it's true, and what you say is completely right. And you did touch base a lot about this like 2 podcasts ago. I think it was 2. I believe
Probably.
so. And you did talk about world building and everything like that. And you talked a little bit about symbolic relationships, and everything. So what I really appreciate is just like going into depths like, oh, I have to get the players to point A to point B. Well, I'm going to tell you as an experienced DM, that usually doesn't happen.
Well, it
You
depends.
try, and they'll sometimes be like, no, there's this thing back there that I want to check. And you're like, children with ADHD keys, jingling them, like,
Uh,
hey.
Have you ever heard of quantum ogres?
Oh god.
Have you? Is it,
I
it's
believe
kind of a deep
so.
internet thing, but
I've heard about it because my friend sent me a link about it, and I was
okay,
reading
yeah.
about it a little bit, but
For the uninitiated, the quantum ogre is also known as the quantum dungeon. Is um, and it's something to use with caution because it's the idea that you're presenting choice to your players, but it's the illusion of choice because it's like you must choose the door on the left or the door on the right. And when behind the screen you're like, it doesn't matter which door you're choosing. This is the room that you're going into, and it has these ogres in it. Um, and I use that narratively um, in delivering hooks quite a bit, where if my party is totally fascinated with doing wizard shit, right? It's like I'm a Yoshi wizard in a goddamn wizard hat. And you know what? I don't want to go every place that you've thought of to deliver this hook. I want to go to that Arcanist Tower over there and harass the people that work there into giving me dope magic stuff.
I feel like you're talking from experience.
All of a sudden, the hook that I needed to deliver either is delivered at that Arcanist Tower and will improv it all the way through because I need to get you to the place. You're going to choose how you get to that place. My job is to provide you a hook. Your job is to provide me with that engagement. And you're always better served on taking a beat and saying yes and to a player than you are of saying, well, you didn't go where I wanted you to go to find any information. So now what are we doing? And then you sit for 15 or 20 seconds in total silence, staring at each other across from a table until somebody cries out that they need a Mountain Dew.
Well, hey, you know what? It's all like I said, that's a great experience for when people who are new. I feel like there's a lot of new DMs watching this podcast right now trying to figure out, oh, my party's going to one and the other. Like you said, you give the illusion of choice to make sure that they go. But also, a lot of that times you need to use a lot of symbolic relationship or symbiotic
Hmm.
relationships to make that happen. Like, let's say, oh, I want to talk to this guy, and this guy, like this NPC that, let's say you didn't even think about. They're like, oh, let's hear. And you're like, oh, well, there's some people walking around. He's like, oh, I'm gonna grab somebody random from the street, and I want to talk to them. And they're like, okay, his name is Bob. I
His name
didn't
it's always Bob or Steve.
It's always Bob or Steve. It's always the random ones. And actually seen a podcast. They talked about that because this one DM, whenever they did it, they named it Bob, and then the characters were like, "There's a lot of people in this country named Bob. We should look into this." And they thought Bob was the main villain.
Yeah.
So you have to sometimes keep track of that. But the symbolic relationships, like Bob will mention something like, let's say they're getting sidetracked and everything, like they said, and you have to get them to this point so that they can go punch some cool shit.
Yeah.
Then Bob would be like, "Oh well, my let's say my brother works at this tower, and they have a lot of cool stuff there. So maybe they have what you're looking for." But now that's a bond. That's a symbiotic bond. So when
Yeah.
you go to the tower and they look for this brother, they're gonna be like, "Oh well, he sent us," and you'd be like, "Oh right, my brother," and you have to keep notes on that.
Well, and it's funny you say that because again, looking at the whole I know a guy thing,
Yeah.
um, I put a lot of that onus on the players, right? To say y- you have three things mechanically that you can do to obtain a hook yourself or solve a problem using your backstory. And like some players really flesh it out, and it's like, here's 3 pages of shenanigans. But a lot of players don't want to do that. Or it's maybe it's a one shot or something like that. Or you just getting into it, you don't have the time, the energy to dive into that. So we'll say a problem is presented to you, and you need to make headway with the local guards because one of you guys got into trouble. And one of the parties says, "I know a guy," and then we all sit up and we look and we be like, "Okay, present your case." And it's like, "Well, I know Steve. Steve and I used to be guards together, and I know that he works for the local watch here in this town. It's been a couple of years, but I'll go chat him up for a little bit." And then all of a sudden, this person exists. You tell me what he looks like. Where it's like, all right, you approach. What does the party see? Like, What's this dude look like? Um, Tell me a little bit about them. They are mine now, and I will role play them out.
They are mine now.
And it's never something for free, but it's an interaction that was going to take place anyways. The party had the ability to influence like and build out the world by being interactive with it. And it's never to the point of like, well, I know a high powerful wizard that will just give us free shit and do everything. That's not how it works. But you might know a high powered arcanist somewhere. Nothing's free, but it's certainly a cool jumping off point for an adventure,
It's
right?
it's a great jumping off point, and especially with like we were talking about, you also have to talk about like sometimes like what's your relationship with this guy? Are you guys friends? Are you guys enemies?
Is he the villain now?
Is he the villain? Are you ex-lovers that you
Well,
stole from him and run off in the night?
that's 100% a thing that you can lean into too. And it's like, who what are we doing? We're gonna go visit my ex-wife. No context. And it's like, all right, well, who's that? Well, she happens to be like the Varia, the black staff of Waterdeep. Sorry.
I let's just say this is not going to be a fun conversation.
There's some alimony involved. Let's do this. Those
Daddy, you have 8 kids.
those those make for interesting adventures and stuff. But it also comes down to like the NPCs in your world shouldn't just be there. It's not a video game. People aren't just like pacing around uh, aimlessly, walking through the streets. Every person in your town lives somewhere. Every person in that community probably does something, right? Um, it's interesting to think of like, well, the local thieves guild has 50 people in it. Okay, so if you're looking at an economy of scale here, you need 50 people that need to be fed, clothed, and housed, and then they need an economy of scale of people to be interacting with. Right? You can't all just be like sexy sneak thieves. I mean,
Sexy.
I mean, as much as we like to fantasize, but you can't just all be lounging around looking hot and waiting to fight things. Um,
One of the games that I know it's so if we go looking at video games, a lot of times this actually gets touch based a couple times because if you actually look at like let's say popular game Skyrim, if you actually look outside one of the main towns and everything, there's farms there. There's farms for the city.
mhm.
And there's breweries. Like you can walk around and there's like, oh, there's breweries, and we like sometimes the characters even say, hey, this brewery, we do stuff for this city. And it's great to look at those and be like, yeah, like that's pretty much how people need to live, people need to eat. There's like let's say you're building a world and there's kids running around. Well, kids need to go to school. Is there a school nearby? Is there an orphanage nearby? Do they have parents? Like
Maybe they used to, and then somebody was sitting around all hot and sexy and decided, you know what, that orphanage is coming right for me.
what?
I don't know. Look, I've played in some strange ass games
It
over the
sounds
years.
like it. Maybe that orphanage is coming for me. It's an orphanage. Calm down.
Shout out to Blind Ferret Studios. But
But yeah,
if you've never seen Looking for Group and anything by Blind Ferret, I'll send you some stuff.
I have to listen to this now because I don't know where that came from. It's hilarious, but now I must learn. Look at him as he's searching it up just to send it
Oh,
to me.
I'm just sending this over to you for later. Um,
It's my homework, guys. I get homework from James.
I'm just gonna see if this will allow me to. Oh, it did too. I threw it in chat. These guys are friggin' brilliant. Um, watch it after. It's worthwhile. It's a parody of The Little Mermaid, but with slaughtering orphans.
That escalated quickly.
Just a little bit.
Um,
But
but you go first.
no, please, please.
Yeah, like as we were talking about, like you were talking about NPCs, and like I know a guy, which I use a lot for my DM now, because if I know a guy, and then I had to build that character, and what's
Mhm.
their symbolic relationship to?
Let the players do it for you. It's so much easier. Um,
I meant
because half
like
the
symbolic relationship, like, hey, do they have a family? Like, if the parents players don't give that to you, and let's say, oh, I haven't seen them in years, it's time to build that character, and it's time to have some fun with that character.
but it's also not a burden. Like, and again, you gave the example before of like, you grab a random guy in the street. Sometimes it's good to have some half-baked NPCs just hanging out, like, names on a list. I
Yeah.
always have, when we're playing, like, 8 names just written down, and the first person that they interact with is the first name, and then the second name and the third name. So I'm not just calling everybody Bob and Steve anymore, right?
It's
Unless it's funny to do so. Like, I'm
it
Josh the kobold.
yeah. It's like I said, it's sometimes if you do keep on naming NPCs Bob and Steve, you're gonna run into issues like, hey, that
Oh,
character that we met
it's a
like
family name.
last yeah.
Yeah.
And just be like, what the hell? Like two tours down, we met like another Bob. How many Bobs are in this town?
Well, you're in Bobtown, so I'm like, we were all sired by the same family. We're all just juniors, and like, I'm Bob the 17th.
Oh god, there's a lot of incest in that town.
Oh god. It also comes down to like, I show up with an identical looking character named Bob the Second, coming to avenge my father.
Yep.
It's a thing that happens, but no, you don't have to over prep your NPCs. You don't have to. You don't have to have every single person and their family tree fleshed out, but it is a good idea. And one of the things that I really like leveraging is it doesn't matter where you live in the world. If you have an internet browser, you have Google Maps, and you can find old timey villages all across Europe, and you can overlay what businesses there are. And I am guilty of this immensely, of going into Google Earth and zooming in on some town in Eastern Europe and being like, okay, that's a cool shape. And okay, where's the grocer? And where's the like hardware store, aka your smithies and crafters and all of that jazz? Oh, look, there's a mill there. We also look at things like, and Naylor is a good example of this, because I get off on world building. Everything needs to kind of functionally make sense. So beside our magically enabled town of the womb in Naylor, um, there's Orenstrad, which is to the north, and there's a couple other like smaller settlements. And one of them is a mill town. They live next to a forest. They run a sawmill and do logging out of a forest and provide that wood to all of the other towns around, because you need building materials. The next town over has a quarry, and they pull slate and stone out for everything. The hell was that?
That was my dog accidentally touching my phone.
I
I
see.
apologize. That's why I was just like, "What is that?" And I looked over and my dog's just like playing have her paw on the phone.
That's all good. Oh, beautiful. I like it. Um, but yeah, the next town over has quarry and slate and stone and things like that. And the design sensibilities when I'm describing those places are, all of the buildings are made of stone. There's very few timbers here. They're done sparingly. But it all has to kind of mesh cohesively as you're going through. So yeah, zoom in on a small town in Eastern Europe, find a layout that works, because people live there. Part of it's going to be for apartments and cabins and cottages and things like that. Your community centers are going to kind of make sense. If you're not already um, well equipped and experienced in doing it, steal from the real world. It's a good idea.
Hey, a lot if from basing off of that, a lot of Hollywood does that nowadays too. Like if
Yep.
you're looking at like, oh, they're in this big city, they'll go to Toronto and film it. Like
Yep.
that's a lot of times what they'll do. Like the new Batman movie, they
Hmm.
filmed it in Toronto. Like they needed the ideas from that. They got a lot of like tile buildings. Like a lot
Hmm.
of places like that use that. A lot of books, even if there's a book out there, like let's say The Hobbit. The Hobbit was based off Ireland. If you go there, you can actually see where there places that it's been filmed and everything.
They filmed most of The Hobbit in New Zealand.
New Zealand, but they have
Yeah.
like the big hills and everything.
Yeah.
Like the iconic hills and everything is from Ireland, and you can actually go there. I
Okay.
believe.
Yeah.
They
Yeah,
also did some filming in Greenland, I believe.
yeah. Because my wife actually has been to Hobbiton.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I yeah, with the big doors, and they went to the Shire and stuff.
See, I've never met your wife, but your wife sounds like the coolest
Oh,
person.
she's dope. She's like,
She's
how
she's
could she not be? She's my voice totally
ah,
cracked there as
I
I say that.
see. I know. It's a little cracked and a little bit of blushing, like
Yeah, no, I married up. It's totally a thing. But
married up. At
what?
least he
It's good.
recognizes it. Good chat. At least he's
There-
like, I know.
I have an understanding spouse that lets me do dope shit on the internet, and lovely redheaded babies because of it. Life is good. So,
They are cute babies.
oh, and she's calling you sweet in chat, and can't wait to meet you.
Ah, I can't wait to meet her too, because now I can just talk shit about you from her. I mean, I will be delightful and not do any of that because I have him as a DM and he will legit kill
I'm
my
just gonna
character.
say, if you want to come visit, I'll spoon feed you a spoonful of Dr. Ramshackle's old fashioned juice that makes you explode.
Oh god, chat, help me. Hey, I said I would do it. What I will not do is, and I remember, chat, tell me if I'm wrong. If we get 1,000 views, I remember someone saying they would do a one chip challenge. Wasn't
No,
that a
so
thing?
the one chip challenge is still sitting over there. I've done that a couple of times. What we were gonna do for our fundraiser, when we did roll for wishes in October, um, is if we hit $15,000 as part of the fundraiser, we were gonna do. I was gonna eat the chip and keep DMing on stream as we kept going. So it's still sitting there. It's waiting for our next challenge. To chat's point, we hit 500 and something subs on YouTube. So if you're new here, we're pushing out a little bit more YouTube content. Um, if you're able to, and if you're inclined, please browse over to the YouTube channel. There's a link in the doobly doo. Toss us a sub. We throw up some reasonably funny shorts and world building stuff every now and again. Or toss us a follow on Twitch, because a couple of times a week we go live with some dope role playing stuff. And now we're back with Roll for Beer, and we'll be doing this every couple of weeks or so. So
Well, hey, and if you do YouTube, you can see my character who's a little menace on Wednesdays that everybody seems to love, but kills a lot of people.
there's that. 100%. And the artwork turned out really dope
The
for it
artwork
as
is
well.
beautiful. We found someone to do the custom artwork and it's just gorgeous.
It's I'm blanking on their name. They go by Satan on Discord and on Twitter and socials and stuff. So, but no, it's if you want to check it out, that's Wednesday nights. Tomorrow night we're going back into Dark City, which is all of my 1980s action movie slash. I watched a couple of seasons of Castlevania in a row and needed, you know,
An
vampire
outlet.
nobles. Yeah.
Somebody needed an outlet for their OC world. And
Yeah, we got a dope theme song with a bunch of saxophones ripping through it, and shout out to Pinergy for lending a hand with that. Through my incessant ramblings of this is what I need it to sound like. Uh, Tom helps out a lot. Uh, I I have two small children, and I don't have a lot of time to do all the composition stuff myself these days. So at most, I'll flesh some stuff out, and then we kind of bring it together, bring it home.
I'm in that stream too, guys. And last session, I will give you a stick beat. My character got punched in the gut by pretty much a shadow, and we left there. So
A hand reached out of another party member and clobbered her. It's a good time.
you know what? It's just he's trying. Okay.
I have some plans for tomorrow.
I know you do because you've sent messages. I'm like, Lakia's gonna die, and you're like, I'm not saying no.
They're right, you know. Yeah. But yeah, we're approaching time. What do we got going on here? So aside from the regular streams, if you're in the Calgary area or around Alberta or so, we're likely going to be at Gamescom Canada come June. Um, I'm going to be heading out to Gen Con later in the year, whether it's for Make-A-Wish International or just touring by myself and going and visiting friends and having a good time. It'll be a good one. We're not around for any of the long weekends, like Easter Monday and stuff. We always take all the stats off. We're going to be running to Airdrie Public Library on May the 4th. We'll be running some D&D sessions for the community there, as well as doing a little bit of like uh, podcasting setup for the masses. If you're interested in getting started with your own thing, you're not sure what to do with equipment or like how to host your platform, how to edit it or deliver it, we're basically going to sit down with folks and help them out and get things started. So beyond that, maybe Calgary Expo. We'll be walking around for a little bit. I got tickets to that.
I have tickets. I will be there Friday for sure. So if people see me, don't hesitate to come up and say hi.
I'll be going Friday, Saturday, because my friend wants to meet Asterion. So
I want to go because if you guys can't see in the background, I'm a huge Star Wars fan, and the person who plays the clones are going to be there
lovely.
from the Clone Wars. So I need his signature.
I need to sit down and watch the next season of the Bad Batch. I've got it on my watch list. I'm just waiting.
Fantastic. I'm not allowed to watch it, and I have to wait because my friend is catching up on Bad Batch and doesn't want me to watch it until they catch up and we can watch it together. And I am driving myself crazy because I'm like, I must know what happens.
I was gonna say you're not allowed to watch it. Stranger danger. What's going on?
Stranger danger. What did you do? No, they're trying to catch up on they've never seen the Clone Wars, so they're almost on the Clone Wars, and then they're watching the Bad Batch, and then they want us to watch it together.
Fair enough. Yeah.
Which is fun. If you plan that with your friends, that's fun. But if you're waiting for them and they left it on such a cliffhanger, you want to strangle your friends and say, watch it faster.
I love it. Thank you, Allison. This has been lovely.
Well, thank you for having me.
Thank you to the folks who stuck around from Scarlett's stream. Join us for next time. It'll be a couple of weeks. If you are interested in world building or like gaming tips or anything like that, check it out on, I say Spotify and Audible, but it's on pretty much every podcasting platform and on YouTube, except for Apple Music, because you know what you did. For back episodes and stuff, we've got folks representing a bunch of different parts of the community, developers, fantasy authors, publishers, different breweries, you name it, we got it. And if you stick around, I think this is going to be the living threat for the rest of the season.
I'm gonna get in trouble one of these days, and he's just gonna be like, "Now you need to drink the bottle." I'll be like, "No, thank you."
The next time you come over, though, you certainly have to try it. I'll have ice cream on hand.
You know what? Here's the thing: if we do that, we got to film it and put it online because I feel like everybody needs to see what happens when you drink this.
I'm sorry, I thought that was implied.
I see.
I never feed my friends this without
filming it. What? Do you have a weird fetish?
The older brother of this, which was just called Unfit for Human Consumption. I think I've got a video of every single one of my friends putting it in their mouth. It's one of the only instances of me taking alcohol to Mexico and not vice versa. Because anytime we go for a wedding or just visiting with friends or whatever, it's like, hey, nice to meet you. Try this. Oh God, why? Yeah.
Oh God, why? Because I like to watch people suffer. Okay, look, buddy.
Look, don't yuck my yum. This is this is what we do.
We don't shame on this. I want to say this stream or podcast. We do not shame. That is not who we are.
Unless the shame is your kink, in which case, shame on you.
Yeah, in which case, you have been bad. I was gonna go further, but let's not do that.
First episode in, she's asserting her dominance.
You know what? I have to.
That's fair. We're gonna raid out because, or for the folks that are on Twitch, to Dad Gaming Online. They're playing some Dungeons and Dragons right now and doing some Hellish Arena stuff. So
they're great.
Yeah. Play primarily using Fantasy Grounds. Um, uh, Mike's good. We've been following them for a little while. They're also Canadian, so if you're sticking around, give them some love, toss them a follow. And yeah, we'll see you guys in 2 weeks when we come back for our next episode. So
Who knows what it will be this time?
we'll see. Thank you everybody for stopping by. We're gonna raid out in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Good
Bye
night, everybody. Bye
bye.
bye.